With our game data in place, it's time to dive into saving and talk about how we're going to save data, how we format that data, and how we can store it off locally, what we can do with it. So let's start by taking a look at our game manager script. I'm going to go into the game manager, and what we're going to do is add a save method. We'll talk about how this works, we'll implement it, and then we'll dive into the actual data. Let's go into the scene, handle scene loaded. And right below our else statement, well, 2 lines below so that it's not included in the else statement, let's say save game with an open close parentheses. We're going to call a method named save game that we're going to generate right now. Let's hit Alt Enter on save game, create a new method. I should get a private void method right here. I'll delete that private keyword. Again, it's just redundant. And then delete that throw exception because we don't want an error. We want to actually save our game. So the first thing that we need to do when we save our game is determine how we're going to serialize the data. And serializing data is essentially taking data that's in our game or in memory and converting it into some sort of savable format, some sort of text format or a binary format that essentially looks like text. It's characters that you're just not going to be able to understand. We're going to start with the JSON format though, because it's one of the most popular ones. It's one that a lot of people are familiar with. It's extremely easy to understand and debug, and it just gets the job done for most things. So to do that, we're going to use the JSON utility method or the JSON utility class and its convert method. We'll do this right here on line 45, and I'm going to say string text, which is going to be our JSON text, equals JSON utility, you can see it auto-completing, capital J and a capital U, dot to JSON, and we want to pass in our game data. Not game manager, but our game data. Because our game data object is marked as serializable, if we go to the game data here, it's got that serializable attribute, and our player data has the serializable attribute, the JSON utility should be able to convert this over to a bit of text that's formatted that we can understand and that the computer can understand to reload it later. Now let's go down one more line and say debug.log, and we'll log out that text. Let's save, go into Unity and see what this does, and then take a look at that data in another tool real quick. So I'm going to minimize. We'll press play. And then as soon as my game starts, we should get our new game called. And right down here, you can see my log. That looks a little bit weird. It's got some brackets, says player data's coins 0, health 6. If I select this line and I just copy this first part right before the debug log, the second line, I don't want that second line, just copy this line, and I'm going to go over and find myself a nice JSON formatter. I've got a whole bunch of JSON formatter options. I'll go select the first one, and I'm going to paste in my JSON data. JSON, by the way, stands for JavaScript Object Notation. It's something that's used a lot in JavaScript code, obviously, but also just in networking, sending data across, and for storing and saving and serializing data. So here's the formatted version of my JSON. You see that we've got the braces here, showing this kind of the outer game data object. Then underneath it, it has player datas, and I can collapse or expand that. And it's got one player data object. This right here is the brace for the single player data that I've got that has 0 coins and 6 health. Let's go in and make some changes to find some more things. Go maybe get another player in here, run over here, get a couple coins, and then I'll even take some damage, and then we'll load another level. Let's do that. So we'll take some damage. Or here, I'll let myself die. We'll get to the main menu. I'm going to clear out my log, so I got nothing in here except for my new entry. There we go. I've got my player data's entry. I'm going to copy this top line. We'll go back into Chrome, go back to our JSON formatter. We'll go back and paste this JSON in. And now you see that I've got my player datas, but I've got 2 objects underneath it. My first player and my second player, and each one has their data. The first player has 8 coins and no health. The second player has 0 coins and 6 health, because this player got himself killed. This player never picked up any coins. All right, let's minimize. And now that we've got our data in the right format, let's talk about how we can save that data out. So we're going to go back into our code, And right here on line 47, we're going to use the player prefs system. We're going to do this as an initial one, then we'll talk later about some other ways that you can save data. But the easiest way, the way that works across just about everything, is to use the player prefs dot set string. And then we need to give it a name for our game or a name for our data that we're saving off. So I'm going to call this game1 with no spaces right now. And then we'll add a comma and our parameter that we want to save off, which is our text, which is just our JSON saved text data. So this is going to save all of our game data off onto our system locally. Let's save, and it's going to save it all into this game1. So every time we save, we're going to be resaving over the existing save game. Let's press play, see what that does and where that data is, and then we'll talk about loading and all of the other things that we need to do for this. So let's play. We get in, we press the button, we've got some saved data, and it still wrote out the same log, but where did our actual data go? Let's take a look on Windows. First, let's go to our project settings. We'll go to Edit, and we'll find the project settings here, and select the player settings, and we need to make sure that you know your product name. This should also be what's up at the top, but you've got your company name here and product name. Don't change them now because we just saved data. Just copy out your product name, and let's open up the registry editor. If you search for REG, you should find it. If you're on a Mac, there's slightly different instructions, and I'll put the link down there for the instructions, but you can essentially find this data in a folder on a Mac just the same. So here I've actually already found it in my registry, but let's just go back here and do a quick search. So say you've just opened up your registry, what you can do is hit find and then put in the name of your project, hit find next, and you should have your project appear pretty soon. Now you might see first a couple things about most recently used applications or something like that. So let's let it search, find our data, and then we'll view that data, take a look at it, and make sure that you're able to find yours as well. Again, if you're not on Windows, it's going to be in a different location, and that location is going to vary from device to device. So let's pull that up while our search is running. So here we've got, there it is, the player prefs data. So you can see on Mac OS, it's stored in the library preferences folder in a file named unity.companyname, which is going to be that default company unless you changed it, .productname.plist. And then on Windows, it's in our registry. On Linux, it's in this folder, Windows Store apps and Windows Phone apps. They're all in totally different places, as you can see. But that data is available on the page, and we'll link that below. So here we've got our first thing, the most recently used app. So it's just showing us that we've run Unity with that. It's got that stored off. So I'm going to hit the button again, search a little bit more. And you can also just browse directly to the location, but I find it's usually just easier to search for it than to expand it out, especially when I'm explaining it to people, having to explain the difference between current user and current machine and all that stuff. And then the weird structures that are relatively arbitrary in the registry seems confusing. So we'll let it keep searching, and any second now it should find our project with the saved game data. So any second now, come on, searching. And here it is. So it found my Alien Blaster under default company, under Unity editor, under Unity, under, what is this? Let's just go, we'll go collapse it all down real quick. I just want to make sure that we find it. You can see it. So, oh man, this is, here's where we can find it. Let's go select it. Alien Blaster, so you can see the full path to it is actually right up here. That's the easier way to see it than trying to expand and collapse. So what do we have in here? Well, we've got our game, where I accidentally renamed it. I put a space in mine and then resaved it. So it has game 1. And if I double click on it, you can see it's got our data here. Here's the binary version of it, or the hex code version of it. And here's the text. It's got that player data, the coin, and the heal stuff. So that's where it's saving our stuff. And now what we're going to do is save out multiple games and start reloading them. Let's go back into Unity though. I don't need regedit open anymore. I don't need to see that. Just wanted to show where it was. And then let's figure out how we're going to do our loading next. Back in the game manager, let's add a load game method now. So we're going to go to right below our save game, add a void load game, and we're not going to take any parameters yet. Instead, what we'll do is call player prefs .getString, and we're going to pass in game1. I fixed my game1 so that it no longer has a space, and we're going to assign that to a string. So we'll say string text equals playerprefs.getString, and passing game1. That's going to give us back this JSON that we just saved out. Now to convert that JSON into a game data object again, we'll say underscore game data equals JSON utility. And instead of using to.json, we'll use from JSON. We give it the type. There we go. It's going to autocomplete and just work. So first thing we're giving it here is the type of object that is in the text, which is a game data. If we put the wrong thing in, it's going to give an error and not know what to do. And we do have to specify it because this method doesn't know from the text what that object type is. Then we give it the parameter of the text, and it's going to convert that into a game data object. Now we need to hook this load game method up. So let's make it public. Save it off, and then we'll go add a load game button. So I've got my new game button. Let's go open that new game button script. I'm going to delete out this comment with shift delete. I don't need that extra comment in there. And then let's turn these into expression body methods and then create a load game button as well. So I'm going to go to line 9, hit alt enter, hit to expression body method. Because it's a one line method, it just shortens it down, doesn't need these braces. That's all it's doing, is saying, hey, this method only has one line, don't add the braces, just put it onto one line, make it nice and simple. We'll do the same for the create game. And again, you put it right after that first brace, and it'll give you that pop-up option. Or you can just manually type out that statement. So I've got my new game button, and I want to make a load game button. Let's copy the new game button, select it all, Control C, go down below, paste, and replace the word new with load. Now, when we load a game button, I don't want to call create new game. I want to call load game. So I'm going to rename this method. And to do that, I'll hit Control R, and call this load game. You can also type on it, hit F2, usually brings up the rename. Oh, F2 is not my rename button. You can go up here, though, and find your rename option in the, is it in edit now? I don't know where it's moved around. Just right click and hit rename there. Control R. It's different depending on what options you choose when you set up, but that should be the default. So we've got our load game button, and I want this to load a game, not call new game. So we'll replace the new game part with load game. And then finally, we need to move this class to its own file, because we can't add it to a game object if it's not the first class in a file, if it's part of another class's file. So we'll hit alt enter. Choose move type to loadgamebutton.cs, which is going to create a new file. Put that in there. We'll save it off. We should have a load game button appear here any second. It should appear as a script down below. There it is. And then the final thing we want to do, let's minimize that. It just popped up on its own, is go to our new game canvas and let's make a new button. I'll go to the scene view, duplicate the new game button. Let's move it down a bit. So expand out the rect transform. Just grab this Y value. I'm just going to keep dragging it until it's somewhere down below that guy's head. I'll rename it to load game button. I'll remove the new game button script, and then add the load game button script. Remember, that's going to automatically register for the, let's see if I can drag it in here somewhere. Let's get it to pop on. There we go, right at the bottom. That's going to automatically register for the on click and call load game. And then the final thing I want to do here is just change this text. I don't want it to say new game. It's not a new game button, it's load. Load game 1. Let's just say it like that. And then maybe shrink the max size of the text down to, 140, so it fits in there pretty good. We'll save. Let's press play and see if I can create a new game, make some little data changes, and then reload my game. So here's my new game. I'll go grab a couple coins. I'll go take a little damage. I'll go to 5. Let's go to 5, 4 health. There we go, 5 coins, 4 health. We'll go into another level so that our game saves, because remember, we save when we load a level or load a scene. Now let's hit play again, and let's watch the logs, because there's something important in that last statement that I think you should know. Let's do it one more time. So we press play with the logs clear, and notice that we also save as soon as we load into the level. So as soon as I started up my game, we're actually rewriting it. Let's go take a look at that again. That's this line right here in our handle scene loaded is calling save game, even if we load our menu. So now we're just going to move this save game call so that it only gets called if we're not in the menu. We can do that by adding some braces for the else. So add a brace before and after the player input join behaviors changed, and then move that save game call with Control X and paste it right up here onto line 40. So now if we load into the menu scene, we won't save. Let's go back into Unity, and actually let's make one more change. In the load game, let's make sure that we actually go into level 1 once we've loaded up our data so we can see it. So just like we do in new game, we're going to call load scene level 1. I'll copy that, line 82. And we'll paste it right here as 57. We'll save. Let's go in, press play. We should no longer see a load on the initial startup, and we should be able to save and load our game data. Let's clear. We'll press play. Now our first game data, if I just load, is going to be a default new value. So it's not really going to be useful, but let's just do new game instead. I feel like that makes it a little bit more clear. We'll go get a coin. We'll go take a damage. And then we'll load a new scene. We'll go into scene 2 so that we save our game, stop playing, we'll play again, and then we'll load our game and watch that data. So here's our saved data. We can see we had 1 coin and 5 health. I hit load game. We've got 1 coin and 5 health, 1 coin and 5 health. Everything is working pretty good. I'll go up to another level. I've got 5 coins now. We'll press play one more time. Hit load game. I expect to see 5 coins. There we go. And if I stop again and I do a new game, I expect to completely wipe that out and have new values. Let's just go verify that we're not crazy. Yep, looks good. No coins and full health. All right, let's stop playing, go to plastic, so that we added support for a single save game. Saved game. And we'll check that in, and then we'll work on adding support for multiple save games.